Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, last year I reviewed all the Godzilla movies from the original 1954 film all the way to 2016's Shin Godzilla. However, last year I did not review the anime trilogy or 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters, which this movie is a direct sequel to. I actually reviewed those the year prior in 2019. However, if you go onto my playlist entitled Godzilla Reviews, the reviews will be put up in the order in which the movies themselves came out to create better continuity for anybody who might be watching all the videos on the playlist. I've also reviewed all the King Kong movies in 2018 with my friend Jeremy. Now, the way this video is going to be structured is the first portion is going to be a quick spoiler-free review on this movie, just given my overall thoughts. Then I'm going to cut to two short reviews from my friends Jeremy and Christian, giving their thoughts on this movie. And then the rest of the video is going to be an hour-long, spoiler-filled discussion on this movie with my friend Nick. Now, Godzilla vs. Kong was originally slated for a 2020 release, however, because of the coronavirus pandemic, the release date got pushed back to March of 2021. Now, the film was directed by Adam Wingard, who prior to this directed several horror films like You're Next, The Guest, the third Blair Witch movie, and the American remake of Death Note. Now, overall, this is actually the 36th film in the Godzilla franchise, a franchise that started in 1954 with the original Japanese masterpiece from Ishiro Honda. And this is the 9th live-action film to feature the character of King Kong, who originated in the 1933 classic from Merian C. Cooper. However, if you also include the animated King Kong movies, then this is actually the 12th film in the King Kong franchise. And this is the 4th film of Legendary's MonsterVerse, which started in 2014 with Gareth Edwards' reboot of Godzilla, which was followed in 2017 with the King Kong reboot, Kong Skull Island. And then that was followed by 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. And the film acts as a loose remake of 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla. This is the second movie to feature these two characters together in the same film, not counting the references to Godzilla that were in Kong Skull Island and the references to King Kong that were in King of the Monsters. Now, the plot of Godzilla vs. Kong is it's set 5 years after the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters, and it begins where Godzilla, who previously saved the world from King Ghidorah, attacks the facility of a corporation called Apex, leaving many people to believe that he's turned against mankind. But Matheson Russell, who is one of the main characters of King of the Monsters, she believes there's something about this corporation that provoked Godzilla, so her and her friend Josh and this conspiracy theorist are now trying to figure out what Apex is up to. Meanwhile, we find out that the perpetual storm system that was previously protecting Skull Island from the outside world is now destroying the island, and King Kong is now being held in this giant man-made facility on the island, but the people keeping him there know this isn't gonna last. They also know that sooner or later King Kong is going to become a target for Godzilla. And in the movie we follow this scientist who previously worked for Monarch, which is the organization in these movies that studies giant monsters. He's offered a chance by Apex to explore the Hollow Earth, which is basically this giant ecosystem that exists thousands of miles under the ground near the Earth's core. But in order to get there, they need a Titan, which is what they call giant monsters in this series, to lead them there, and that Titan ends up being King Kong, but this of course invokes the wrath of Godzilla. But that's really all I can say about the plot without getting into too many spoilers. Now, the film stars Alexander Skarsgård, Rebecca Hall, Millie Bobby Brown reprising her role as Matheson Russell, Kyle Chandler reprising his role as Mark Russell from the previous film. Brian Tyree Henry, Julian Dennison, Shun Oguri, Demián Bichir, and Eiza González. Lance Reddick has a very small role in the film, and Kaylee Hottle, who plays probably the best human character in the film. Now, with the exception of one character, the human characters in this movie definitely are kind of the weak link of the film, and I know some people say that about all Godzilla movies, which I do disagree with. I could name you several Godzilla movies that have very good human characters, where the human story is just as important as the monster story. But even I'll be the first to admit that you could probably count on one hand the kinds of Godzilla movies that are like that, but they do exist. Like, you can do a Godzilla movie that has very complex human characters. Now, supposedly there were a lot of deleted scenes from this movie that did give the characters a lot more depth, but I guess for this movie, which is meant to be more of a tribute to the campier Godzilla films of the 60s and 70s, I guess that isn't too much of a problem, but there is one character in this movie that absolutely needed more character development, which me and my friend Nick talk about in the spoilers section of this video. But while the movie might lack in the human drama department, it makes up for that with the monster action, and my god does the movie deliver on that, and arguably that is what most people are going to see this movie for, and in my opinion, it delivers on that hardcore. And the scenes where King Kong and Godzilla fight are just spectacular to look at, and really are visually stunning. Now, I remember when I was a little kid, I saw the original King Kong vs. Godzilla for the first time, and I remember that movie capturing my imagination like nothing else. So I can imagine a kid watching this movie for the first time and it doing the same thing. And it really is a childhood dream come true to see these two legendary monsters go at it in a big-budgeted Hollywood movie. I also like that King Kong actually gets a lot of development in this movie. Arguably, this is more King Kong's movie than it is Godzilla's movie. But yeah, overall, Godzilla vs. Kong is a flawed but ultimately very enjoyable monster movie, and if you're a Godzilla fan or a King Kong fan, I think you're definitely going to enjoy this movie. Now I want to cut to my friends Jeremy and Christian Feliciano giving their thoughts on this movie. Now in Christian's review of this movie, he does get into some spoilers, and after that it's going to cut to an hour-long spoiler-filled discussion on this film with my friend Nick. Now, in my discussion on this movie with Nick, we do go off on some tangents that are still, for the most part, Godzilla-related, but they do kind of veer off into some of the other films. Now, we recorded this discussion over Zoom. Now, Nick actually has a microphone, whereas I don't, so his audio sounded really good, whereas the audio from my end sounded fucking terrible. So, I am giving you fair warning about that.
I enjoyed Godzilla vs. Kong. The plot is all over the place and doesn't make much sense, but, the epic monster battles more than make up for it, because, let's be honest, that's what people are going to see this movie for, the monsters. I mean, they're the stars of this movie. I must say, though, I do like how the monsters have weight to them. You feel every hit they take, and you feel when they're enraged. I mean, the special effects team really outdid themselves on this one. The battles between Godzilla and Kong are epic and spectacular and thrilling to watch. So, if you love giant monster movies, then you'll definitely love this one. Alright, bye everyone.
Godzilla vs. Kong. This is the film that I've been waiting for since I was a little kid and I first saw the original Godzilla vs. King Kong. But in this one, he's not called King Kong, so that's why it's just called Godzilla vs. Kong. He's not a king yet. I don't know. I don't care, whatever. The point is that this is the film I've been waiting for. This is the film that I wanted to see. The moment they said they were opening up this whole MonsterVerse thing with all the kaiju creatures, I was just dying for them to do Godzilla vs. King Kong. I said they have to do this one, and when they announced it, I was so happy. When I saw the trailer, I was so happy. When I saw the film, I was even happier, because the film is exactly what I wanted. It's a lot of fun. It has a story that made sense to why they fought. It's not like another film out there, PVS, that didn't have a good build-up to the fight, and then when they did fight, the fight ended horribly. It ended with a name. This one doesn't have that. This one has a nice, real good build-up, and the idea that Godzilla's going crazy because he can sense another creature out there. He doesn't know what it is, but he can sense it, and he keeps going crazy because he wants to fight it, but the people don't know why he's doing what he's doing. That's a real good way to do this. The way they made the people react to Godzilla acting this way was awesome. I like the fact that they were confused and they thought that Godzilla had turned on them, and they weren't sure why he was doing what he was doing, and you know, I thought that was just a really good way to do the story. I thought it was fantastic. And then the fight scenes themselves, they were epic. I mean, the CG in this is beautiful. I love that they're doing CG because the old movie, I love the old movie still, I really do. But the old one, you know, the graphics don't stand the test of time because of the fact they are people in suits and, you know, they're using little toy sets and stuff like that. You can tell very much so nowadays that it was not as realistic looking as it is now. I mean, now it's not like they look 100% real. You could tell it's, you know, these are CG monsters. But I just like that, you know, they put a lot of money into it, and they made exactly what I pictured when I was a kid watching the old one. Because when you're a kid, you don't see all the costumes and the toy sets. You just see monsters fighting. So this looked like how I imagined it when I was a little kid. And speaking of things I imagined when I was a kid, Mechagodzilla being in this just made the whole movie even better. I loved the way he looked. He looked badass. The fact that Ghidorah's consciousness was put into Mechagodzilla was awesome. I love that. The fact that it was Ghidorah returned, and that's why Godzilla was going crazy, because he's like, oh my god, my arch enemy's back and I need to kill him. And oh, that was fantastic, because it really establishes Ghidorah as his arch villain. I mean, he already did in the second one, but the fact that Ghidorah returned is very comic booky. I thought that was awesome, that he was back from the dead and how it was time to take him out again. That was great, and the fact that he was now a super mega robot, it was just it was just a lot of fun. This film is a lot of fun. The negatives, you know, the humans are there and they're fun. Don't get me wrong, they're not bad. It's just that at the end of the day, the humans in these films and all these kaiju films, they're just there just to be there for exposition or something like that. Like, I didn't really care too much about the characters, the people. I didn't have any like emotional attachment to them. Like, I was attached to Godzilla and Kong. That's all I was attached to. That's all I really cared about. And those are the two characters I cared about. When they get hurt, I care about them, and I want them to be okay. When Kong was really badly hurt by the end, you know, I felt bad and I wanted him to get back up. Like, that's where my investment, my emotional investment came into the movie. That's where I was really invested in, was seeing where Godzilla and King Kong's storylines went. That's all I really cared about. Seeing that Godzilla has once again established himself as king of the monsters. Seeing Kong become king of the underworld, or wherever that place was where all the monsters were. I'm assuming that's going to be Monster Island. I don't know. But seeing that was all I really cared about. The people were just there, and they helped the movie, you know, pass by, and it's no big deal. But at the same time, it's like, I don't really care about the people. I've always felt that way about these kaiju films. The ones that are about battling and stuff. Not the first Godzilla or the first Kong. I love those characters, and they were done great, and they're there for a purpose, you know, to show the effects of all this stuff. But in the later films, and especially these, like, I could care less about the people. I just want to see the monsters, really. Now, I did hear that there is a longer cut of this film with all the characters, all the people. I don't know how true that is. I don't even know where I heard it from, but I just heard that there is a longer cut of the film, and apparently, they cut it down for time or whatever for the theaters. I don't really care about that. I'm kind of done with director's cuts. BVS and Justice League kind of took it out of me. Not that the director's cuts were bad. BVS actually became better with the director's cut, and Justice League was better because of the director's cut. But that's really like saying, I had a normal bowel movement as opposed to diarrhea. It's still shit at the end. So I just don't want to see any more director's cuts ever. And the fact that people are protesting for so long and calling for the director's cuts, and I just kept seeing it everywhere. Like, I'm sick of it. I'm done with director's cuts. So I hope that this just stays like this and they don't come out with another director's cut of Godzilla, because I don't want to see any more director's cuts from any film. I don't care what film it is. I just don't want to see any more. I'm so sick of the idea of director's cuts. Like, even just saying that word makes me sick. So I don't even want to see it. I don't even want to hear about it. I don't want to worry about it, nothing. Because I know I'm a nerd, so if they ever did, put it out, I would end up having to watch it. But yeah, overall, a great film. I highly recommend everybody watch this. If you're a fan of Godzilla, if you're a fan of Kong, you'll especially love this. Actually, wait a minute. If you're a fan of Kong, you'll still enjoy this, but you may be upset at the ending because, yes, Kong does lose to Godzilla. Ultimately, Godzilla wins the fight. And I have watched some podcasts where people talked about the film and they were very upset that Kong lost in the film. And I've read some reviews where people were upset that Kong lost. And they were like, wait a minute, if Kong was going to become king of whatever that little place was, why didn't they make him win in this film? And I was like, because Godzilla ain't done winning, When he's done winning, then Kong will win the fight. But until then, Godzilla will always be king of monsters and he'll always win. So we just got to deal with it. But yeah, now that that's out the way, highly recommend the film again. I hope everybody checks it out. And yeah, I really enjoyed the film. Highly recommend it. Thank you so much for everything. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, this is my friend Nick, who is probably a bigger Godzilla nerd than even I am. But why don't you tell my audience who you are and talk about what you do on the internet and talk about your history with both King Kong and Godzilla.
Yeah. Well, like you said before, I'm probably a bigger Godzilla nerd than you. I don't want to make any assumptions, but yeah, I've always considered myself a walking encyclopedia of the Toho Godzilla movies and the legendary movies and all that jazz. What I do is I basically just run an Instagram account where I can freely just use something that I use as an outlet to geek out over Godzilla, Kong, Gamera, and just anything giant monsters. And with the current state of the fandom right now, that has mostly consisted of the MonsterVerse films and the new Godzilla anime, which what an underwhelming thing that was.
You're talking about Singular Point?
Yes, I am.
I actually haven't seen any of it yet.
I won't spoil anything, but it's the monster action is good, but the one thing I will say is that the plot requires big brain, and that's something I don't have.
Well, I might actually enjoy it. I'm not sure.
A lot of science, a lot of science and all that stuff. But no, the monster fights are really cool.
Okay, I mean, I know we had the anime trilogy recently.
Yeah,
I actually liked the third one, but unfortunately, you kind of have to sit through the first two in order to get to that one.
I mean, saying you like the third movie out of the anime trilogy is kind of like saying you liked Revenge of the Sith out of all the prequels. Like, that's the one that everybody objectively says that wasn't bad. I like that one. I
just liked that the anime trilogy's take on King Ghidorah. I thought it was very Lovecraftian.
Yeah, and even that, back to the Star Wars things, I can't really shit too much on that because I love the prequels unapologetically.
The only one I like is actually Revenge of the Sith. The other two, I can't stand Attack of the Clones. I think that's the worst of the whole franchise.
Blasphemy! That was Jango Fett's that was Jango Fett's time to shine, man.
Listen, there's only one good line. There's only one good scene in that movie, or good line, and that's "I hate sand."
Oh boy. Yeah, so that's about me. I'm just a Godzilla nerd on Instagram who makes content.
What do you think of the Godzilla and King Kong's latest outing? What did you think of this movie?
All right, so I walked out of the theater not really liking it. Hear me out. But there's a reason. Because I am still holding on hope, or I was still holding on hope, that realism and seriousness and grounded in reality would still apply to the MonsterVerse like it did in 2014. I mean, I know giant monster movies, there's no real room for the words realism and all that.
I kind of disagree with that, but for me, I'm not looking for actual realism, but what I'm looking for, if it's a giant monster movie, is
grounded in reality. I feel is a better term. Not realism, but if I'm watching 2014, I'm like, oh, that's something that I could see happening. Two monsters coming out of nowhere and fighting. But
for me, not to cut you off, but I view the original Godzilla as a very realistic film in terms of how
that's what I mean.
React. Yeah, that's what I want in a giant monster movie. If there's realism, are the human characters reacting the way people probably would react to a giant monster showing up? In terms of being scientifically accurate with the monsters, you're never going to get that because that can't happen. You know?
Well, I mean, Shin Godzilla sort of had that. I mean, a lot of people say I hate how Godzilla moves in that movie. He's just like a giant statue, and yeah, he does. But if that were to really happen, I wouldn't imagine something that's fucking 350 feet tall to be flexible and all that. He'd be very stiff and slow moving. But I do, on top of that, I do kind of agree that he could have had a little bit more movement when he walked. It was literally just a statue moving through the streets of Tokyo. But yeah, the realism and especially with Godzilla movies, we definitely have more of the campy, anything goes sci-fi fun fest than we have serious films like the original and Shin Godzilla.
Yeah.
And 2014 kind of gave us a good mix of both, where it was a healthy dose of grounded in reality with some good old-fashioned monster fights. And then Kong Skull Island, okay, kind of. They kind of got a little silly with the whole Hollow Earth. It was it sort of felt like a Marvel movie with how they were trying to make the characters I guess a little bit more animated, because I don't want to use the word comedic.
True, but you know what? I think the characters in Kong Skull Island were way better than the characters in Godzilla.
I do too. 100%. I do too. Because I feel like that's what the movie presented itself as. It presented itself as, this is going to be just a fun popcorn flick. People stranded on an island. There's going to be a couple one-liners here and there. And then back to the whole grounded in reality argument, King of the Monsters just said, fuck all that shit. Here's the Hollow Earth theory. Here's Ghidorah is an alien. We got this flying battleship. And,
but I will say this about King of the Monsters, is I thought the movie tried to be sort of a blend between the two kinds of Godzilla movies, because at least in terms of Godzilla films have always had social commentary. The original film is obviously about nuclear proliferation. I can't even say the word right now.
Proliferation?
Yes.
I think that's the word.
Yeah, whereas King of the Monsters was making more of a commentary on climate change, but I felt like King of the Monsters tried to be sort of that balance between the campy Godzilla and the more serious-minded Godzilla.
I've always viewed King of the Monsters, instead of calling it Godzilla King of the Monsters, I have to call it Godzilla 2.5 Hours of Michael Dougherty's fan fiction, because that's kind of what I feel it is, because it's got all the elements of a fan fiction, and I'm not dissing on fan fiction. One of my friends in the community, he does really good fan fiction. Shout out AG Fury. It's because it has all the elements of fan fiction. The reuse of popular IPs, Rodan, Mothra, King Ghidorah, callbacks to or references. The Oxygen Destroyer. There was one other obvious one. I'm blanking on it.
Well, the fact that King Ghidorah was nicknamed Monster Zero was
Monster Zero, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Having the outposts of Rodan and Mothra named after like the last two numbers of the year those movies were made. Like it's literally just.
And then the fact that Rodan came out of a volcano, I felt was kind of a
reference.
Yeah. Not just to him coming out of a volcano in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, but the fact that Rodan died by a volcano in the original Rodan movie. Yeah,
like I said, it's fan fiction. That's all it is, and not necessarily saying that it's bad, or that the movie is bad itself. I myself enjoyed it a lot. Definitely has its flaws, but I wouldn't consider it one of the worst Godzilla movies out there.
I actually think it's probably my second favorite of the MonsterVerse behind Kong Skull Island. Just because I liked how unapologetically, like it was basically a love letter to the entire franchise. And I also kind of consider it to be almost like a slightly more serious version of Godzilla Final Wars, which was also this batshit crazy love letter to...
A slightly what version?
A slightly more serious version of Godzilla Final Wars.
Yes, I agree 100%. But I kind of like that's like my main issue with the MonsterVerse as a whole. Not anymore, because we got way off track and I'll explain. But one of my issues with the MonsterVerse was that it just took a total turn to like the campy sci-fi, whereas like it could. I mean, we only have 4 films, so like there's not a lot of room to like make that smooth transition into it. Like,
but you could argue that about not to cut you off, but you could even argue that about the Showa series. You had the original Godzilla, which was dead serious. You had Godzilla Raids Again, which tried to be kind of serious, but by the time you got to the original King Kong versus Godzilla, already you're like in the realm of pure camp.
I get that, but I was like, I always make the comparison to the MCU where Phase 1, like those movies, they sort of blend together. I mean, like they sort of have the same tone, I guess, if you will. Like the only thing that really was the most out of the ordinary was Thor, but that's because he's like a space Viking. How serious can you get with that? But I'm saying like the pacing of the MCU, it just feels natural. So by the time we get to like something completely out of control and silly like Guardians of the Galaxy, where it feels like a smooth transition, like, and then like after that you have something like you watch something serious like The Winter Soldier or Civil War, something that's not a sci-fi space quest, but more of like a action spy espionage type genre of a film. Like it just, for some reason, like it feels natural, I guess, and that might be because like there's so many goddamn MCU movies that you don't mind it as much. Whereas the MonsterVerse, it was Godzilla 2014. All right, pretty realistic, grounded in reality movie about monsters. And then the first trailer shows up for King of the Monsters, and it was just I could tell like this is going to be totally different. This tone is going to be totally different from 2014, and even Kong Skull Island. And then now I'm backtracking. I'm getting back to why I didn't like Godzilla vs. Kong at first when I left the theater, because I was still holding on to that hope that some seriousness could be brought into the MonsterVerse, because there's not a lot of that in the Godzilla movies, like Toho, like we have way more campy monster action than we do like serious films, and that's not a bad thing. Yeah, that's not a bad thing. It's just that the franchise as a whole, I feel, is like sort of lacking or forgetting its roots.
I get that. Trust me, that was actually one of my disappointments with Godzilla 2014. Is I wanted the film to be darker, honestly. Like, especially,
well, it was dark.
Yeah,
not figuratively, but literally dark.
Oh well, yes, it was literally dark. I couldn't see shit in that final fight.
Yeah.
Even though I thought the final fight between Godzilla and the Mutos was pretty awesome in the theaters, but if you're watching,
I liked it. Yeah.
But if you're watching it on TV,
you gotta watch it at night.
Yeah.
In the dark.
Because it's hard to see the fucking thing. You know.
Yeah. Dude, I can't tell you. Like, there have been times where I'm like, I watch it in the dark and I still find myself like going, eh.
I almost feel that's a trope in modern filmmaking where they make the thing so physically dark that you can't see shit. Mm-hmm. Luckily, it seems like they're starting to move away from that because I remember King of the Monsters had a lot of scenes at night, but you could still easily see shit, you know?
I feel like that issue has like progressed as the MonsterVerse has gone on, like especially with Godzilla movies, because Kong Skull Island, you could see everything because fights happen during the day. Like Godzilla 2014, couldn't see shit. King of the Monsters, slight improvement. You could see a little bit more, but you could still room for improvement. Godzilla vs. Kong, when the fights do happen at night, you can see everything. Mm-hmm. Like, so I think it's like, as far as lighting is concerned, it's a constant improvement with the MonsterVerse. But back to my point of, so I went to go see Godzilla vs. Kong opening day, and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be great. And I kind of I was kind of expecting it to be like, you know, silly and everything, but I wasn't expecting it to be as far as plot is concerned, bare bones and minimalist as it was.
Yeah.
And in blaming myself, like I should have known, because the movie never presented itself as anything that wasn't going to give you the bare minimum when it came to plot detail. And literally, like when they're lifting Kong with the helicopters, I'm like, how did they do that? Like, they didn't even bother to tell you how he got on the boat and chained down in the first place, but how did they move him from the boat to the helicopters? Well, when they literally said 5 minutes before, if he moves again, Godzilla's going to continue his attack. But meanwhile, Godzilla just split, and he's like, all right, I'm out. He just made no sense.
Well, to be fair, I mean, you could say those same things about the original King Kong versus Godzilla. They lift King Kong up with balloons and helicopters and that.
But there was, in the English dub, the guy said, I have invented this new unbreakable wire. Check it out.
Yeah, there was that. Yeah.
But and my biggest gripe was they made the whole plot of the movie was literally like, the reason why Kong is going to Hollow Earth is because it is so hard to get to Hollow Earth. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, like towards the end of the film, Godzilla drills a hole to Hollow Earth, and it's like they can get in and out as they please. Like, I rolled when I saw it, I rolled my eyes. I'm like, didn't they just spend the entire first half of this movie like bitching about like, oh my god, getting to Hollow Earth is next to impossible. Oh my god, we're on Hollow Earth. This was supposed to be impossible. But meanwhile, like, oh, we can go right up there, right up to that hole.
Yeah. Well, that was at that point in the movie, I was like, this is far-fetched even for a Godzilla movie. Okay, that would have felt ridiculous even in the late Showa era. Well, actually,
that's what I consider this movie, though. Like, it's like a modern day Showa movie, because if you look back on some of those old movies, God, burped. If you look back on some of those old movies, like a lot of the plot was minimalist detail, so we can get to minimalist plot detail, so we can get to the monster action. Yeah, like that's exactly what this movie presented itself as, and for that reason, like when I watched it a second time, I was like, this movie is really, really good. I mean, so I guess like when I said I hated it walking out of the theater, that's, I guess, the wrong word to use. I think the proper term would be like I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I loved the monster fights the first time. Like every time I saw this movie, the monster fights have never disappointed. I was just kind of like turned off by the plot detail being so shitty.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. But again, kind of like you, I do look at this as basically a modern-day Hollywood version of like the 70s Godzilla films, which is really where the Godzilla franchise was at its goofiest, I think. I mean, like,
Right.
Even though I just said, like, burning a hole through the earth would have been silly even in those movies.
I could see it happening.
In those movies, you had Godzilla drop-kicking Megalon. You had Godzilla using his
flying
to fly. You had Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla using magnetism powers, like he's Magneto or something. At this point, it's like nothing's too far-fetched for a Godzilla movie, I guess.
Yeah, no. Pretty much. Yeah, anything goes at this point. I mean, if they're gonna be making more MonsterVerse movies, just add the aliens. Just bring the Exilians into the picture. Like, why not? It's my hopes for a serious American Godzilla movie are miles away at this point. So you might as well.
That's why, like, when Shin Godzilla came out, I was like, okay, this is kind of what I wanted Godzilla 2014 to be. But I also understand why Godzilla 2014 wasn't like that, because
exactly, it was
see how polarizing Shin Godzilla is. So
plus, like, they knew the fans would see it regardless. They wanted to get general audiences into the seats as well, and the general audience would be kind of turned off by a solo political commentary or social commentary driven Godzilla movie.
Yeah. Although that also makes me laugh, like, because so many people, when Shin Godzilla came out, because of all the politics, were like, this ain't Godzilla, and I'm like, wow, you don't know Godzilla then.
Admittedly, I was kind of like one of the people who was like, oh yeah, you know what Godzilla needs? Bureaucracy. Yeah, eye rolling, but now I'm like, now I've matured a little bit, and I'm like, that's kind of, it's paying homage to the roots, yeah. Because I was kind of like spoiled with the campiness of the Godzilla movies at that point in time.
Oh, well, I grew up with the campy Godzilla movies, but
so did I, yeah.
But when I finally saw the Japanese version of the original Godzilla, I was actually taken aback with how dark it really was, and how much more of it's really more of a drama film that just happens to feature a giant monster. And now it's my favorite film of all time, the original Godzilla.
Fun fact, you know, the Godzilla, his skin is also political comment or social commentary. It's to pay homage to the skin damage caused by the Hiroshima and Nagasaki survivors.
Oh, yeah, I knew that.
I just found that out recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's something that, you know, even though these new movies make reference to radiation, that's something that they basically just, you know...
It's a plot, it's just sort of something that's like there. Like in the MonsterVerse, it's like the radiation of these monsters is causing the environments to regrow. It's a positive thing, not a negative thing.
My big issue with the MonsterVerse is just making Godzilla more of this ancient creature, which technically he was in the original, but the whole point of the original was he came about because we fucked up as a species. Whereas here, in these movies, you kind of get that, but he's more of like a guardian in this, where I actually think it would have worked really well.
He's a force of nature.
Yeah, I actually think it would have worked really well if Godzilla in this series was the result of nuclear radiation and mankind fucking up, and have that go up against King Kong, who almost always was like a guardian of nature and stuff. Like, have pure nature go up against something that's the result of man's scientific hubris.
I feel like they would have gotten to that, like, or that would have been the case, but the 2014 Godzilla movie was meant to be a standalone film at all. Like, this whole MonsterVerse thing originally was never supposed to happen. Like, 2014 just had a wildly successful opening couple of weekends, and they're like, fuck it, let's add King Kong into the mix. Why not? That's like probably one of my favorite pieces of trivia. Like, and it could have ended like that, you know, like they set it up perfectly. There was no cliffhangers, no after credit scene. Just Godzilla just saved the day, bounced back into the water, and said, "See ya, peace out," and the movie just ended right there. And that could have just been like the whole thing. I think, but like you mentioned, like back to the series argument, the one thing I wanted to bring up, and then we'll get to Mechagodzilla because I know you want to. I think what I would love to see is sort of like what the Gamera movies did in the 90s, where you mentioned, I saw your video on the series recently, and you mentioned it's kind of like the Dark Knight of giant monster movies, and basically is. It's the Dark Knight trilogy of monster movies. It's a dark tone, completely 360 from what Gamera used to be, or 180, I think is the expression. I would love to see like that, where, like in the Dark Knight trilogy, it takes Batman and all of his wacky villains, but puts a serious real world spin on them. Like I would love to see that with Godzilla and other monsters.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, and I really do feel like this series had a chance to do that, but the fact that it didn't, I'm not upset about it because I still like these MonsterVerse movies.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, my least favorite's actually Godzilla 2014. I hate to say. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like Godzilla 2014, that's what it is. It's like a Dark Knight Godzilla movie. I remember I saw it in the theater with my friends all those years ago, and the main theme that kind of went da-na-na, 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 da-na. I turned to my buddy, I was like, this kind of sounds like a Batman theme, like a Dark Knight theme. And he turned to me, he's like, yeah, it kind of does.
But if they wanted to go really dark, they need to have a scene where a mother's cradling her scared children, saying, "We'll see your father soon in heaven."
Oh fuck
This movie needed more of that.
So Mechagodzilla.
Oh yeah. What do you think of Mechagodzilla in this movie? Now
I was blown away. I loved Mecha G in this movie.
Yeah, I'll admit I didn't know he was going to be in the film because I tried to avoid all like things relating to this movie that would be spoiler related. So I just kind of went into the movie cold. So I wasn't shocked that he was in the movie, but I was still pleasantly surprised that
you could see him in like the first trailer though. Like it was almost impossible not to know that he was because there was also that toy leak in 2019, like towards the end of 2019. If you remember that, like it was showing off Playmates toys, and there was it was a huge leak, and like you could see Mechagodzilla, and everybody from that point on knew, oh, okay, so Mechagodzilla is obviously going to be in this. And like, I was going to say something. Fuck, what was I going to say? Shit, I'm blanking. Okay, I can't. No, but I always knew that Mechagodzilla was going to be in it, and I knew what he was going to look like because there was so many fan renders. And the way I got it, I was kind of upset, and I kind of got it. Yeah, this is what I was going to say. I kind of got it over the spoilers this way. Like, okay, so I know what he's going to look like. I want to see how he is in the movie. Like, what kind of role does he play in the movie? And they did a good job at keeping that secret. Like, if you knew that Mechagodzilla was going to be in this, there was still plenty for you to see.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one thing I thought was cool is how in the movie Mechagodzilla is more or less like possessed by King Ghidorah's consciousness.
Oh yeah, he is. They make that They make that obvious in the novelization.
So I think that's really interesting because like King Ghidorah is basically Godzilla's arch nemesis. Like he's the Joker to Godzilla's Batman. My thing is like I think it's really interesting that you basically have Mechagodzilla more or less possessed by, like Godzilla's second greatest antagonist is possessed by his greatest antagonist. Like I think that's a really interesting twist on all that. I also think it was definitely the fact that they used King Ghidorah's skull to bring Mechagodzilla to life in this movie. I thought was a definite reference to the Heisei series, how in that series Mechagodzilla was made from the remains of Mecha King Ghidorah.
And also in the Millennium, when they built the bones around not the same thing, but like just in that thing of building Godzilla around the bones of dead Mecha-G and around the bones of dead Kaiju, he was built around the bones of the original Godzilla. So still keeping the tradition of building Mechagodzilla over the bones of dead Kaiju, and it never going well.
Yeah. Also, the fact that in the movie, at the end when you see Mechagodzilla start attacking Hong Kong, it comes out of that mountain. I thought that might have been a tribute to how in the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, you saw Mechagodzilla, who you thought was Godzilla at that point in the movie, come out of a mountain. But maybe I'm reaching way deeper than was actually intended with that.
No, that could definitely be a callback.
Also, the fact that King Kong ends up battling Mechagodzilla, I think might be a reference to the fact that Mechagodzilla was kind of inspired by Mechani-Kong from King Kong Escapes.
Well, I mean, it can really be called inspiration if you're taking it from yourself. But one thing, you brought up Godzilla, Kong fighting Mechagodzilla, and now eventually, they team up. I am so surprised that the fans just let that shit slide like they did, because I remember when this movie was even months and months, even maybe a year before the trailer even came out. There was this whole debate like, oh, they're gonna team up. No, they're not. They're not gonna team up. Like, it was like a legit argument between fans. Like, no, we don't want to see a team up. Like, I swear if they team up, I'm gonna hate this movie. They better not pull a Batman versus Superman. And they did team up, and no one really cared. Again, that's another. I'm kind of upset that they both lived. That one of them didn't die.
Yeah, that was kind of false advertising because they did say one will fall.
Well,
King Kong
they didn't say one will die
into the earth.
True. One. I mean, one will fall doesn't necessarily mean one will die.
All right.
I think they probably meant like fall from the title of the Alpha Titan or fall from the throne. And Kong obviously submitted to Godzilla, and without that, the whole clear poo thing that they did with the heave vehicles, Kong would have definitely died. So
I also felt, and again, I might be reaching way deeper than Adam Wingard intended, but I also felt the fact that they kind of used electricity to bring Kong back in this movie was a reference to the original film again, where lightning was the thing that revived Kong.
They literally did the what's those things like with the heart?
I can't pronounce the word.
Defibrillators,
I think they're called.
Defibrillators. Yeah, it was literally like clear. Poof.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another thing too, like with the minimal plot detail when Nathan is his name.
I think so. Are you talking about Alexander Skarsgård's character?
Yeah, his character. He literally like sets the controls, and then they jump cut. He sets the controls, runs away, and then they jump cut. He's like on the ground running. Like, wait a minute. You just jump cut from like that's just bad filmmaking.
Yeah.
Like at least show him like going down a slide, like sliding down Kong's torso or something. Like that's just lazy filmmaking right there.
I liked that in this movie, Godzilla more or less starts out the movie as a bad guy. I liked seeing Godzilla as a bad guy again, at least in this new continuity.
And I would have liked to, again, bad plot detail. It's something I can't get over it. The characters, are we just going to pretend like they did Ren Serizawa right?
Oh yeah, I wanted to bring that up because that character, I didn't even realize when I first saw this movie that was supposed to be the son of Dr. Ishiro Serizawa from the other movies.
Right.
That really should have been brought up in this movie.
I think there was a deleted scene where they did do that. He was like in a bar with somebody, and he says like, "You knew my father," and it was going to be like a short little Ren does not share the same feelings towards Godzilla as his father did, and he kind of used Godzilla as like the reason why his father, was so obsessed with his work, didn't really pay much attention to him, like why he kind of resents his father. And the movie just expects us to know that just by the fact that he's working for the company that wants to get rid of Godzilla, and that his name is Serizawa, and if somebody like a big fan of the MonsterVerse who knows the original Dr. Serizawa from 2014 and King of the Monsters, like they could easily make that connection, and because like, oh, he's working for the bad guy, so him and his dad must not have had a great relationship.
Yeah.
And fuck, I lost my train of thought. But to an average viewer, they're not going to understand that this character had a connection with one of the MonsterVerse's most like major characters. You know?
Yeah, and I think that was a big missed opportunity, is because he could have been an interesting character, I think.
Even had opposing views to Walter Simmons. I can never remember the exact names of these characters. God damn it.
Yeah, but, I forgot the villain's name of the movie. But what do you think of the main human antagonist of the film?
I like how I was just about to say, I like how you can clearly tell that they're both Ren and Walter are going after Godzilla for different reasons. Ren because he wants to destroy Godzilla for relationship with his father. Meanwhile, Walter is just trying to feed his ego.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that they both have different motives for wanting Godzilla gone.
Yeah. I also felt there was some definite Frankenstein references with the character of Walter, the fact that he's this really arrogant scientist who thinks he can play God, basically, and that ends up biting him in the ass at the end of the film.
Right.
Again, I might be reaching deeper than was intended, but I sort of saw a Frankenstein connection with him.
I mean, I guess so. But yeah, if we're on the topic of human characters, Mark did not need to be in this movie. Kyle Chandler's character did not need to be in this movie at all.
Yeah. What do you think of Matheson's role in this movie?
Who?
The daughter. The one.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
Again, offered nothing. Was just there. It was just a shoe-in B story. It added nothing to the plot, I feel. It was just Madison is a conspiracy theorist now. Okay, eye roll. Got Josh, the comedic character, and Bernie. Just.
What do you think of Bernie, though?
I liked him. I mean, I don't know. I didn't hate the B story with Madison, Josh, and Bernie, but it added nothing to the plot. Literally nothing. It was just there to. The only purpose is to give us exposition of why Godzilla attacked the Apex facility. But quick side note, but did you see when Mark is trying to get a hold of Madison and he opens his messages, there's two risk A text messages that he was really? That you could see. Yeah, in one there is you have an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
When you open your messages and you can see the previews, there were two numbers. One was just a number with the the drooling emoji that people send when they're horny, and then there was another one, a woman's name, and the text said maybe this Saturday or Sunday, and I pointed that out. I'm I think Mark is getting back into the dating game after Emma's death in the last movie.
I think the filmmaker just accidentally shot a shot of Kyle Chandler's actual text messages.
Well, then who is Kyle Chandler sending the drooling emoji to, or who is sending him the drooling emoji?
I don't know.
There are some questions that need to be answered. Either that or Mark is on the prowl and he's playing the field and he's gotten some not safe for work pictures.
I will say I really liked the line at the end where Mark says to Josh, "Shut up, Josh."
Yeah, it was Madison's idea. Shut up, Josh.
Well, and speaking of Josh and the whole B story, it did lead to one of my favorite, probably one of the funniest lines in this movie, where Bernie, when Josh pours Bernie's flask all out onto the computer that basically shuts down Mechagodzilla, before Bernie realizes what that's doing, he says, "You mean I have to die here with you and sober?"
Yeah,
But you
that
know,
was good.
it's funny that you're calling it the B story, yet we talked about that more than the arguable main human story of the film with the girl from Skull Island
Mhm.
and Rebecca Hall's character, and arguably you could say that's the main human story in the film. So, what do you think of that whole story?
Um, I could see it in a Showa era movie. Like I said, the modern Showa era.
Yeah,
Like that's something like, oh, we need to go to the Hollow Earth. No, okay, there's a Hollow Earth now. Like if you told me in 2014, side note, like if you told me in 2014 that there was a Hollow Earth, I would be like, get the fuck out of here.
yeah.
That is side note. I also after seeing this movie, I kind of want Hollow Earth to be a real thing. Because like it's an actual conspiracy theory, and like I kind of low key want Hollow Earth to be a real thing.
It would be cool. It would be cool. You could easily look at that and be like, okay, this is like not even pseudoscience. This is borderline fantasy. Yet a lot of that is a lot of the scenes where they go to Hollow Earth in this movie is kind of a direct reference to Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yes.
So I don't know how much we can attack that, considering a lot of that really was taken from Jules Verne, who's arguably one of the greatest science fiction writers to ever live. I thought the Hollow Earth scenes were beautifully shot. I do gotta say that. And even the music in those scenes were freaking beautiful, too.
I kind of wished that the Hollow Earth was designed differently. It's not like this floral, lush landscape and environment. I kind of like hoped it would be sort of like dark and grim and rocky and
that's honestly like
thunder everywhere.
When they're referencing Hollow Earth and Skull Island, that's what I was envisioning, like just giant caves under the ground or something filled with these creatures.
And then like it opens up into this massive cavern of like rock and bedrock or whatever. It kind of reminded me, like it looked like they just took a set piece off of a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. It legit looks like a planet out of Guardians of the Galaxy.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I thought it was interesting, like the temple that they find there. Like when I first saw the movie, I was wondering who the fuck built this temple, and then I was thinking, oh, duh, the other Kongs built the temple.
Well, there was in the last movie in the credits, there was like with the newspapers and everything, there was a headline that says Monarch to explore Hollow Earth and research ancient Hollow Earth civilization. So maybe the civilization built it, because it was established in the last movie that there was a Hollow Earth civilization. Even I love how in this movie, like the idea of Hollow Earth was such a massive, like, yeah, right to some people. Meanwhile, they literally discovered it in the last, like Godzilla's lair was in a passageway in the Hollow Earth.
Well, the reason I said that I thought it was like Kong's species, because they established in the movie that Kong basically has human intelligence. Mm-hmm. The reason I thought it was like his species that built that temple in the Hollow Earth is they established that without special technology, normal humans can't get down there without being torn apart, basically. So that's why I figured, okay, it was the original Kong species that existed millions of years ago that maybe they had like a human-like civilization and they built that temple at that point.
I really wish they would. I think we need a movie that like goes really in depth into Hollow Earth, because, like in Kong Skull Island and in King of the Monsters, even Godzilla vs. Kong, like there's all of these passageways. There's so many entrances, and back to my argument, like they made it seem like getting into the Hollow Earth was such a impossible task. Meanwhile, the other films were like, we just need to go through these underwater and underground passages. Like they went into the Hollow Earth on total accident in King of the Monsters. Meanwhile, in Godzilla vs. Kong, like we can't survive going through this literal Windows 95 audio visualizer.
Well, the way I kind of looked at it was like
without getting crushed to death.
Well, the way I kind of looked at it in King of the Monsters is they weren't I almost took that when they found that like underwater, like those underwater ruins. I was like, I almost took that as more of like a variation on the whole Atlantis myth or something.
Fair.
So I didn't think like that was literally the hollow earth that Serizawa went into when he needed to activate the bomb to awaken Godzilla in that movie.
But they mentioned that they were pretty far down, like 20,000 feet or something.
Yeah, but in this movie they established that that's like what did he say, like 1,000-something miles that they go down to get into that other ecosystem.
I don't know, like the whole Hollow Earth thing in this movie is just like the rest of the plot, very minimal, slapped on, and we're expected to just sit there and take it.
Yeah,
like literally, there's this giant cave in the South Pole that if you go through it, there's crystals everywhere, and then there's this vortex that brings you. It's like, okay, are you going to Hollow Earth or another dimension? Like,
yeah. At that
why?
point, they almost might as well have made it another dimension at that point.
Exactly, especially with Godzilla blasting a hole through the literal Earth's surface and making an easily accessible entrance. Like, okay, so are we just gonna forget about, like, I don't know. It's just my problem is, like, I want this movie to be more serious than it actually is. I can't just sit down and be like, all right, this is just a dumb, fun movie. Mm-hmm. And I love it. I love it so much, and I hate it for like as silly as it is.
Yeah, and you see, I just accept the movie for what it is at this point, you know?
I mean, I do too. It's just like part of me can't help but be like, this movie is so dumb. It's cool monster action and everything, but it's so dumb. But a larger part of me is like, shut up, this movie's cool.
Yeah, I almost feel the Hollow Earth, I feel like they're trying to make that like this series version of Monster Island.
People were saying that that was going to be Skull Island when KSI came out.
Which would have made sense to make Skull Island Monster Island, but, you know.
Mm-hmm. What are you going to do?
It would be cool to see Godzilla in the Hollow Earth, to see how he would react to like those other monsters that you saw in Hollow Earth and stuff.
There's some concept art in the book, in the art book, where it shows Godzilla crawling through the tunnel and going into Hollow Earth to fight Kong.
Okay.
So, I mean, that would have been pretty cool, but like, I'm glad they made the decision to have them fight in the city. That was like much better.
Yeah.
But I want to know in future MonsterVerse films, I wonder if they're gonna bring to attention the massive hole that's in the middle of Hong Kong and how they prevent like the Hollow Earth creatures from getting through that hole.
I don't know. I didn't write this movie.
Because I mean, last time, if I remember the movie remember the movie correctly, like they left that temple door open, and the only thing that was able to open and close it was Kong. So,
you know, the plot, you know, it's silly as fuck, even for a King Kong Godzilla movie. But, you know, since I grew up on a lot of the Showa Godzilla films, I can accept a silly plot in a Godzilla movie. I wish the human characters had a little more development. I know there are a lot of Kaiju fans or Godzilla fans who say, "Oh, you don't watch these for the human characters; you watch them for the monsters."
Some of the Godzilla movies you watch for the humans, like that was the whole point of the original and Shin Godzilla. Some may argue.
And not only that, but GMK I think has great human characters.
Got the poster right there.
Yeah. So I'm not one of those Godzilla fans who says, "Oh, you don't watch Godzilla for the human characters." I would say that argument has some credibility to it, but also I think it's also very dismissive too when people say that.
It's a relative statement, kind of, if that's the right. But like, yeah, some of the humans are one of my favorite parts of Tokyo SOS. Like, I love the human characters in that movie.
Yeah, the human characters aren't too bad in that. Actually, I don't know, Tokyo SOS, I wasn't the biggest fan of the main protagonist of that. Like, I like the characters. I know it was some of the same characters, but I liked the main girl in in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla a lot more than I liked the main protagonist of Tokyo SOS, personally.
I want to find out like who did the or like who the voice actors were for the English dubs of the Millennium films, because I'm pretty sure they recycled the same female actress for every female lead. The girl in GMK, the Yuri was her name, the pilot in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, the main female lead in Megaguirus. Yeah. They all either they're the same person or they just have different people that sound the same, because I'm pretty sure they're the same person.
All right. You see, I've only seen a lot of those in the original Japanese with the English subtitles because I'm
lazy. I watch the dubs.
So I wouldn't be able to speak to that. Although I will say, speaking of dubs, if you want to talk bad dubs in a Godzilla movie, I think a lot of the Heisei films are horribly dubbed. Like those dubs that...
They definitely, but before you move on, they definitely use the same person for like the kid characters. Like there's just this nasally cadence.
He sounds like this. Bye guys, I'll see you later. I gotta go to school.
Like,
yeah. And you see, I actually think a lot of the Godzilla films of like the 60s, not so much the 70s ones, but a lot of the 60s Godzilla films, when I watch the English dubs of those, they're actually pretty well done, I think, those dubs. Like, I don't know if dubbing's just like an art form that's kind of just decreased or like declined over the decades or something.
Say what you will about dubbing, Shin Godzilla got it spot on. But I think it's because it was done by Funimation, and I know they have pretty high standards for voice acting.
Yeah. Again, Shin Godzilla I watched in Japanese with the English subtitles, so... Although I did see a little bit of the dub of that, I think.
It's not a bad dub. Like, it's really, like, the voice acting is very... you could tell, like, that they're seasoned voice actors, and, like, they're not just bottom of the barrel sort of, like, dubs. I really hope Funimation does the dub for future Toho projects, because it was real. Shin Godzilla, probably some of the best dubbing, if not the best English dubbing I've ever heard. As opposed to, like, you know, maybe in like the Heisei and the Millennium, like, and some of the Showa movies, it's kind of like monotone and flat and cheesy.
Yeah.
But Shin Godzilla, it's like you can definitely tell like their standards set. Like, we actually want actual voice actors.
Okay. Yeah, for me with dubbing in a Godzilla movie, like, it depends on the kind of Godzilla movie you're going for. Like, if I'm watching the original Godzilla, I want to see the original Japanese version of that. But if I'm seeing one of the 70s ones, those I do prefer to watch the dubs, because those are already not meant to be taken very seriously at all.
I also love how every, like, civilian or, like, literally one-line character in the dubs, they sound like they just rolled out of the special ed department. Like, they have the same, like, doofy voice. Like, I think in, trying to find a good example, in, I forget which one it was, but, like, there are these two construction workers, like, in a literal, check out that noise scenario, like, check out that strange noise. And it's really like, so what are we going to tell the boss? I don't know. Like I said, I'm lazy. I don't feel like reading. So same thing. I watch my anime dubbed as well.
Well, with anime, it's a little... For some reason with anime, it's a little different for me because it's already animated, whereas with dubbing, you know, sometimes the words don't match the lips, which I know is like a big stereotype for the dubbed versions of Godzilla movies.
That's what they're known for. But, like, it's the same thing. Like, people don't realize that American movies are dubbed for international audiences, so...
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's not just... I'm sure it's not just Americans who have that complaint or stereotype. I'm sure someone in, like, France or China, like, oh, this movie's from America, we're gonna have to watch it dubbed.
Where do you think this sits, like, in the whole pantheon of both King Kong and Godzilla movies? How do you think this one holds up as an installment of both franchises?
You mean like in a top 10 list, or?
Well, even just like, do you think this is gonna go down as like one of the better installments of either franchise, or how do you think this is gonna be remembered as time goes on?
I think it's not going to hold up or be remembered like anything a groundbreaking piece of cinema or like artistic cinema. I think this is going to be remembered kind of like a superhero film is remembered.
All right.
Kind of like where it's people will remember it as like, a superhero movie before they remember it as like this movie is important because these two monsters are two legendary monsters, like icons of cinema, and they fought once in the 60s and now they're back at it again. Like people will remember it as let me restate that. Like they remember it as that, like that it's important because these are two legendary film monsters that are fighting, but it won't go beyond that. Like a seasoned fan will be like, this is important because like these two monsters are trying to think of the right words here. Like it's important because fans have always wanted it. It was such a big deal back in the 60s, and there's so much history behind this. Like the original Godzilla versus King Kong was a match actually meant to be King Kong versus a Frankenstein monster.
Mm-hmm.
And then the script was sold to the Japanese, who put Godzilla in it. Like the average moviegoer is not going to remember it like that.
Yeah.
Like I think it's gonna. Yeah, I'm sticking with it's gonna be remembered kind of like a Marvel movie where it's a big popular summer blockbuster.
Okay.
It'll be remembered as a summer blockbuster before it's remembered as like this significant piece of cinema.
Yeah, I think the way I should have worded my question was more like, do you think this is a worthy installment of either franchise?
I do, yeah. I feel like both Godzilla and King Kong have their serious side and their campy side. I think this falls somewhat in a weird gray area, maybe leaning a bit more towards the campy side. Because like Kong has always sort of been like this terminology again, grounded in reality. Meanwhile, Godzilla has always had the fun, campy sci-fi stuff, flying through the air, drop kick with the tail.
Well, I wouldn't say always, because you have the original.
More than Kong, I feel.
Yeah.
Because he has more movie installments, so obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it is a worthy installment for both.
All right.
Regardless of the tone.
Okay. Yeah, I would say about the same. I don't know, like, how much of a fan of the original King Kong versus Godzilla you are, but how do you feel this compares to that one?
I think it compares pretty well in that, like I said before, it's a modern Showa era movie. The plot was very bare bones and minimalist back in the original and this one as well. Cheesy elements, and it presents itself as like the main focus of the movie is the monsters. So I think it is a notable adaptation, not notable, it's a true adaptation. It stays very true to the tone of the original. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I think they're both great in their own right. I think this movie was made with love and respect for the original, and that's why it worked. It's basically just a modernized version of the old movie, so it's not better, it's not worse. It's just a true adaptation.
Okay, yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I do personally prefer the original King Kong versus Godzilla, but that's also, I'm biased because that was it was both my first Godzilla movie and my first King Kong movie, so it's hard for me not to, be a little biased.
You were spoiled. I grew up on the Heisei movies. Like, my first introduction to Godzilla was the Heisei films. That's why I defend them so hard.
Well, actually, my second Godzilla film was Godzilla 1985, which was the American version of The Return of Godzilla. So I kind of was introduced to both, but growing up, I was always more into the Showa. Like Showa was what I grew up on.
Whereas, I always loved the Millennium. Like the Millennium still is my favorite.
You see,
series.
I gotta say, Millennium's my least favorite era of Godzilla, with the exception of GMK and Final Wars, just because of how batshit insane it is. The other ones I just find to be kind of very
I just like the modern
road.
effects. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with cheesy suitmation, but I always prefer CGI or motion capture or modernized suitmation effects. That's why I love the Gamera Heisei trilogy so much, because it looks just so. It raised the bar of suitmation. To say that my favorite series is the Millennium series, well, I mean, actually, now that I think about it, it's not necessarily true. I don't think I have a favorite series. I love them all equally, I guess. But as much as I love the Millennium series, I am not blind to the many flaws and shortcomings it has. Like, it had such potential for an anthology Godzilla movie, but what we got was technically an anthology series, but it was pretty much just a copy and paste tone of what came before it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. That's my biggest issue with that series. And I think GMK is the only one that actually tries to do something different with Godzilla.
Right. Yeah, I was just about to say GMK and Final Wars are the only two black sheep of the herd, whereas Godzilla 2000, Megaguirus, Tokyo SOS, Mecha Godzilla are just pretty much carbon copy tones of each other.
With an anthology Godzilla series, since you're not tied down by any continuity, they could have done a Godzilla versus Gamera during that series, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of missed potential in that series. But I like it. I can't help but like it.
All right.
I like the more modern Godzillas.
Fair enough. I guess, you're attracted to what you grew up with, I guess,
I mean, I grew up with everything. Like, my introduction was, I don't remember which one exactly, but it was the Heisei series. And the library, when I was a kid, like, my local library had a nice assortment of Millennium era movies, a couple Heisei movies, and it mostly had Showa era movies. So I did technically grow up with mostly the Showa era, but I had a nice little mix of everything. Blockbuster always had the Millennium series, though.
But any closing thoughts on Godzilla versus Kong?
Watch it if you haven't already. Very good movie. I think I'd rate it a 7.7 out of 10. It's good, but not without its flaws. But as far as modern day, shut your brain off, monster action, A+.
Yeah, I can pretty much agree with that. It's if you're a fan of the more silly, campy Godzilla films or just kaiju films in general, it is a fun watch. It's a great tribute to the Showa era kaiju films, and a movie like this, I think, can really awaken your inner child. And honestly, if you have kids and you're trying to get them into Godzilla, you should watch this, because I think if this were around when I was a kid, I probably would have watched the shit out of this movie.
Oh, yeah. And it's a great way for somebody who's not necessarily a fan of the old suitmation cheesy effects to get into Godzilla. That's why I recommend either the original or Shin Godzilla to somebody who is interested in watching a serious Godzilla movie, but they don't like the shitty effects and all that, or not shitty, but shitty for now by today's standards.
I would also put The Return of Godzilla on that list. The first of the Heisei series.
But I'm talking if you want something that is modern, check out Shin Godzilla. It's basically a remake of the original. The Angry Video Game Nerd, he did a good job of breaking it down. He made a video before this movie came out, how to introduce a how-to guide.
Okay. It's flawed but enjoyable. That's really all I can say. And that's what I would can say about the entire MonsterVerse, honestly. A flawed but enjoyable series.
Objectively, not bad. I kind of like, I kind of, especially King of the Monsters. It's something I always compared it to. Last thought. I always compared it to like the Warcraft movie that came out a few years ago. Okay. Critics hated it, but for the most part, the fans liked it, and like it was sort of that way with the Warcraft movie.
Yeah, I know we're like really going back to so many other Godzilla movies in this review, but to briefly mention that about King of the Monsters, I actually don't get why there's so much hate for that one. I really don't, because
me neither.
I do think there's
it had such a better plot than Godzilla vs. Kong.
Not only that, but there's a guy here on YouTube who does kaiju reviews called Up from the Depths, and
I love that guy. Yeah,
he did an excellent video on like some of the deeper themes in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and he admitted that a lot of them are just surface level, but the movie does have a lot more to say than people are giving it credit for, I think.
So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoyed this video overall. That was my review on Godzilla vs. Kong, and bye.